The young recruit laughed, and his friends joined in. Then the old man rolled up his sleeve, and in an instant, their smiles disappeared. The training compound at Camp Ridgeway in North Carolina was buzzing that afternoon. Dozens of recruits were grinding through obstacle drills, mud crawls, rope climbs, rifle carries. Instructors shouted commands through bullhorns, their voices mixing with the clatter of boots against gravel. And then, almost unnoticed, a figure appeared near the edge of the fence. An old man. His posture was slightly bent, his steps measured, his coat worn from years of use. His faded cap read only one word, almost too washed out to see: veteran. At first, no one paid him any attention, but a group of recruits, sweaty and restless, spotted him as they marched by. "Hey," one whispered to his buddy, "check it out. Grandpa thinks he's part of training." The others chuckled. David Miller, the youngest in the group, added with a grin, "Maybe he's here to teach us knitting." The laughter spread quickly among the recruits. The old man didn't move. He stood silently, hands folded, eyes fixed on the field. And when the breeze lifted his sleeve, just for a second, Miller saw it. A tattoo. Not flashy, not decorative, a trident. His smile faded instantly. David slowed his pace, his body suddenly stiff. His buddies noticed. "What's wrong with you?" "He's just some old local." But David knew better. That tattoo, sharp, precise, unmistakable, was not something bought in a shop or drawn for style. It was earned. It was the insignia of a Navy SEAL. The old man remained motionless. His silence wasn't weakness. It was weight. And for the first time, David felt his laugh echo back like shame. Later that evening, after training ended, David couldn't shake the image. The tattoo, the silence, the gaze that seemed to pierce through drills, mistakes, and noise. He went back to the barracks restless. The others joked about him, saying he looked spooked. But when lights went out, David found himself sneaking back to the edge of the training ground. The man was gone. Only the faint crunch of gravel lingered, and an old Ford pickup was disappearing into the trees. David whispered to himself, "Who are you?" Days passed. Each Thursday, the old man returned. Always early, always alone. He leaned against the same fence post, arms folded, watching. David started digging. He used late-night Wi-Fi at the base to search. Old SEAL veteran North Carolina tattoo trident. No results. Finally, buried in base visitor logs, he found a name. Thomas Callahan, listed as authorized silent observer. No engagement, no rank, no photo, no details, just a note renewed year after year. David's gut tightened. This wasn't normal. One afternoon, the heat hung heavy. Recruits struggled through rope climbs. David's hands burned, sweat pouring into his eyes, and then he felt it. The silence. He looked down. The old man was watching, eyes narrow, expression unreadable. At that moment, David's grip almost failed, but he pushed harder. Not for the instructors, not for the score, but because someone who had carried that trident was watching, and he wouldn't let himself fall. The instructors began to notice, too. One senior petty officer paused mid-drill, eyes locking on Callahan. His jaw tightened, and then he nodded, not in greeting, but in recognition. Another instructor later told David quietly, "You see that man at the fence? He's not here for nostalgia. He's here because he's earned the right to watch." Don't ever forget that weeks later, recruits, led by David, snuck out one night. They bolted a small brass plaque to the fence where Callahan always stood. It read, "Reserved until he says otherwise." The next Thursday, Callahan arrived as usual. He paused at the plaque. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply touched the metal once with his fingertips. then folded his arms again, and the recruits stood taller that day. Every single one of them. Months passed. The man kept coming, though fewer recruits dared to joke now. David, once the loudest laugh, now carried himself differently. He wasn't just training to pass, he was training to be worthy. One day, Callahan didn't show. Not that week nor the next. Whispers spread through the barracks. Some said he had passed away. Others said he had simply moved on, but the plaque remained, and so did the silence. Years later, David Miller, no longer a recruit but now an instructor, brought his own unit to Lane 4. He stopped them at the fence, pointed to the plaque, and told them a story. Not of medals, not of battles, but of a man who said nothing, yet spoke louder than any speech. And when his recruits asked who Callahan was, David simply replied, "He was the reason you don't laugh at silence, because silence sometimes carries more history than words ever can." Some men never need to explain who they are. You see it in their scars. You see it in the way others stand straighter when they appear. Thomas Callahan never asked for respect, but in the end, he taught an entire generation how to carry it. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone whose silence spoke louder than words? Tell us in the comments. And if this story touched you, subscribe to The Human Stories, where silence, sacrifice, and legacy are never forgotten.